Hello and welcome back. I'm Ken. We're visiting with Mike. Mike, we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say about meaningful change in all different kinds of organizations.
Well, today I wanted to spend a little bit more time on metrics. Uh, in theory, it's rather simple, but in practice, it can be a challenge. So I was trying to figure out what are the basic reasons you want to have metrics. One of them is people like to know how they're doing. So if you're able to show how they're progressing, then that much better. The second part of it is to identify root causes of deviations of one sort or another, either good performance or bad performance. Whatever contributes to change, what is it and how do we avoid it or how do we replicate it? And third reason is an over the time, over an horizon, what's our general direction? How are we doing direction-wise? The problem that I see in many places is that the decisions and the discussions are strictly focused on financials, dollars and cents. What were the sales? What were the profits? What was the overtime? What was whatever? And yet, this is a reflection of whatever else is happening in the organization. And it's important to have a good reading of what's happening in the organization. And I was thinking of what would be a good example of that. And one thought was if you're diabetic, and 30% of the population is diabetic, so there might be a lot of experts out there too. But the thing is that typically the doctor have you take a blood test every 6 months, every 3 months, depending on what's happening. For the A1C, it's a blood test. And then in addition to that, you have you prick your fingers, or you have some of those monitors that you see advertised on television, continuous monitoring of the sugar, the gluten. So the thing is that it's a good example of not only having an overall view, but also managing the day-to-day, the meal by meal kind of activity. So for instance, if you take you prick your fingers or you look at your results early in the morning, what you will find is that typically the readings will be higher. Why? Because for a lot of people, the body revs up before you get up in anticipation that they will need energy during the day.
Mhm.
So the numbers go up. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is before meals, hopefully the system has settled down and therefore it gives you another reading, and that'll be totally different. And then one of the suggestions is to take samples of 2 hours after you've had a meal, because by then, hopefully, the system has settled down from eating and from whatever sugar related food that you had, and how it has affected your reading. So hopefully 2 hours later, it's come back down to a reasonable level. So the point is that you see that at different times during the day, you'll have different readings. And so when you make your observations, when you take your measurements, makes a big difference. And so if you just stick with the once every 6 months assessment by the blood test, it doesn't give you much feedback on what contributes to the ups and downs in the gluten in the sugar that you have in the system. Then in addition to that, not only is it an issue of what you eat, but there's a whole bunch of different things, external factors, that will influence the readings other than the diet. One is, are you active? Are you exercising? If you're not, then it's not very good. You need to exercise. You need to move. Stress. If you have stress, guess what? That will shoot the numbers up. Poor sleep. That will jump the numbers again. So the point is then when you look at the numbers, the key thing is the interpretation as to what caused the good readings or the bad readings, and how do I duplicate that kind of behavior so that I will get the situation, keep the situation under control. So the whole idea is how do you manage the metabolic health of the person. So that's one aspect of, variations, that timing and conditions affect the results.
And Mike, I
yeah.
think you've touched on something that's really important to me, because I've worked in organizations where leaders looked at numbers and drew the wrong conclusion.
Yes.
Said that the numbers were leading them to this and making a decision when that's really not what was going on. And for me, that illustrates another one of your important principles, for them to be in touch with the people who are serving on the front lines.
Yes.
Am I right? Is that how?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You've got to understand, you have to analyze. Just jumping at looking at the numbers and jumping at conclusions is the wrong approach. You've got to really understand the setting. So for instance, when we looked at the school teacher, what were the things that he was tracking? He was looking at the students doing homework. Well, that's feedback. That's statistics in some ways. It's a 1 on 0 thing, but are they doing it? Note keeping. He would collect the notebooks once a week to see how able were the students to capture the thoughts, the ideas, the principles that they needed to learn. Then you reinforce that with quizzes. Quizzes, unannounced quizzes, keeps people accountable. Did you do your homework? Did you study last night? You keeping, so you see the whole different kinds of things. Then you've got exams, which is more of an overview. It says, okay, out of all of this over a period of time, how did you do? And then you've got the grade. Then you can look at the class average. How did everybody else do? That reminds me of a story. One year when I was at school at Berkeley, all of us were required to take statistics in the major that I was in, and it was not a good experience. But anyway, I got a C, and I wasn't too happy. But at least I passed. So the following semester, I'm going to the part B of the statistics, and I look around, and there's not one familiar face but one. So I asked the guy, where did everybody else go? Oh, he says they were at the dean's office complaining because everybody else failed the class.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Again, statistics and how you interpret it and what you look at makes a big difference, and you can jump to the wrong conclusions.
Yeah.
You had the same thing with Breton in the police department. How did he use statistics? Well, once a week, each precinct had to report on their performance, not only on their performance, but also what they're doing about it. Okay, so they were taking the additional step of not just talking about the numbers, but the implication of the numbers and what actions are required. So you have to close that loop. So you've got to look at the right numbers to start with to be able to come down to the right actions that will change or reinforce the kind of outcome that you want. And some of the things, like Breton wanted to know right away if shots were fired. In other words, you didn't wait for the week reporting. You wanted to know real time what's happening out there, kind of thing. So again,
Immediately.
that's another aspect of different times, different issues, different things. Uh, I was looking at the results of Chicago crime scene recently, and the total, the politicians will tell you, well, crime is going down. Well, the overall number is true. Their numbers are going down. But whoopie-doo, that's not a sense of what do you call it, security to know that the numbers are going down because like last weekend, you see that there have been, I forget how many fall deaths from shootings and stuff like that. So the point is that you've got to look at between the overall number and, like for instance, what they acknowledged in that report, there were 4 regions in the Chicago area that weren't going down. So the problem is you've got, when you look at totals, you average the good and the bad. And that's not sufficient. It's an indication, but you can jump to wrong conclusions. So one of the things that I find interesting with the crime situation is no mention of demographics. The closest thing that I said to that is that they're acknowledging that some neighborhoods were more prone to crime than others, but they don't address who lives there. They don't address who the people are in a sense of age or social background or anything like that. All of that is politically incorrect. Therefore, nobody touches it with the football. And yet, that's where the issue is. And unless you change the mindset and the culture that exists within those areas, you're not going to make any headway.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point is that you have to understand the details. Another example, not to bore you, but another example was at a chemical company. One of their division was very, very profitable. So when I saw the numbers, the profit numbers, I said, well, that's interesting overall, but do you have anything by product line? They had about a dozen product lines that the plant was making. And the accounting department was not very happy because they would have to do extra work to find out. So I insisted, and I got support from the general manager, and a month later we got the numbers.
A month.
And guess what? Out of all the sales, I said, for instance, they were making 100 million profit. Out of it, when you look at the total, what made the 100 million? What you had is $130 million profit and $30 million losses. So big shock. So that's the value of looking at the details. You've got to understand the whole picture, not just a superficial number, because the number was, hey, 100 million was fine, but 130 was a lot better. So then the challenge was with the sales force, and and the response was very, very interesting. I talked to the salespeople afterwards because there were 2 choices. We either get out of those products or we raise the prices. So either way, let's raise the prices. And the salespeople say, oh, we're going to lose money. Oh, we're going to lose accounts. Oh, the sky will fall.
We can't compete.
A few weeks later, I had a chance to meet with some of them, and they said, oh, one of my customers said, oh, I was wondering when you guys were going to get smart. So the customer knew that the price was totally wrong, but, that's what you asked me, that's what I'll give you. I'm not going to give you more. So the point is that you've got to look beyond the totals, because total average the good and the bad. It's like saying, for instance, the average weather in Washington state in the month of June is 75. well, yes, it's 75, but if you look at the details, there are some days where it's 65, like it's right now today, and other days it's 90, like it was a few days before. And, that's totally different picture. Anyway, so the thing is that you have to look at the details. In the production area, you've got to look at the peaks and the lulls, the valleys, and what brings the ups and the downs. And sometimes one of the things you have to do is to change the way you track the numbers. In one place, they were counting the number of parts they were producing. And then a month into the exercise and posting it, while it was helpful information and people were eager to see, they were saying, but you don't understand. There's a number of setups that we have to make. And every time we change what we're making, we've got to change the setup. So then we suddenly recognize that not only do we have to count the numbers, but we also have to look at the number of setups. And then we start having some numbers that make more sense. So, every situation is different, from a school, from a hospital, from different places. But the point is, you've got to look at the detail.
And the answer is no, your real world stories are not boring us.
No, but I was trying to illustrate the need to have specificity. Can't even say the word. Be specific and doing it at the times that make a difference.
Yep.
Because otherwise you may come to the wrong conclusions or not address the issue.
We're almost out of time. Do you have any additional comments or want to sum up?
So when you look, so for instance, one of the things that I was doing when I was marketing manager, not only did I look at the overall numbers, but also variations by region, by district, because it made a big difference as to where we were competing. In some areas, we had something called national accounts. Certain companies like General Motors don't want to buy through distributors. They want to buy direct from the manufacturer.
Interesting.
So if that's the case, then you price accordingly. And guess what? The margins a lot of times are not as good as they would be in mom and pop kind of stores or operations.
Yes.
So you've got to look at the specifics of your business, of your organizations. An example of that would be what could you track in a church? Attendance is one thing. Giving is another, but you also have what's the makeup of the church?
Yes.
The number of visitors. If they're coming in or not coming in, they come once, they come twice, they disappear. All of those kinds of things have to become part of the conversation, because the idea is, how do we reach more people? So every situation is different, but you have to look at the detail, the specifics.
Yes. Great examples.
Anyway.
Thank you. Looking forward to more. I'm going to call this Metrics 2.
Metrics 2.
I'm glad we revisited metrics and had some discussion on it.
The key thing is totals average the good and the bad. And you may be satisfied with the total, but you'll be a lot happy or satisfied if you were able to raise the bottom and keep the top strong.
Well said. Thank you.
Anyway. Very good.